prison. Well, Usama Hasan is an imam and also head of Islamic studies for the counter-extremist group Quilliam, UK. Joins me in the studios. It's good to see you. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for coming in. Two elements to this story. First of all, two of these men met the third man while in jail. And then we have, so that we can discuss potential radicalisation in prison and extremists getting together in jail, but also the fact that all three men were then released from prison and were clearly still had extremist tendencies. The first point about these men meeting up in jail, how much of a continuing problem is that, and what is the best way to deal with it?
Radicalisation in prisons is still a major issue. The government's official reviewer, Ian Aitchison, last year published a report where he said radicalisation in prisons is out of control. And we have seen steps since then. So, for example, the most dangerous radicalisers are now being isolated completely. They're effectively kept in solitary confinement. And also, I've noticed from my visits to prison that terror convicts are being kept in separate wings so that they're unable to socialise, to get together, to form gangs like this. And also, interestingly, I noticed other Muslim prisoners were actually shunning and avoiding terror convicts because the appeal of this kind of Al-Qaeda or ISIS-inspired group is, thank God, fading, especially with ISIS losing territory.
Oh, really? You're actually seeing the prisoners themselves now deciding to keep away from some of the other hardened Islamists?
Yes, exactly. I found ordinary Muslim prisoners saying, well, you know, we've heard such a person is a terrorist convict, so we keep away from him, basically. And all of these developments are positive, I think. As you said, these three people were already radicalised before they went to prison. The problem was they met up there and formed a new friendship, etc. And that's something which the prison service, as far as I know, is trying to crack down on to stop that happening again.
You see, that's a tricky one, isn't it, in this particular case, because two of the men had seemed to be clearly further down the road when it came to radicalisation and wanting to attack Western targets. They had tried to get into a terrorist training camp in Pakistan. The third chap that they met in prison, he was arrested and put in jail for holding terrorist literature, for having a magazine on Al-Qaeda. Well, that suggests that perhaps he wasn't as far down the extremism road as the other two.
Exactly, and then there's a fourth man.
And then the fourth man that they met outside,
rather than the Three Musketeers, they're really like the Four Lions. But it shows that hardened ideologues who felt from their interviews that, or from their recordings, that they wanted to do something, as they said, can influence others. And that's why they were on the radar, even though they were released from prison, because, of course, their original offences were relatively minor, shall we say. But they were clearly on the radar, which is why the security services were monitoring them. And thank God they managed to pick them up and avert what could have been a mass casualty attack. So it shows the complexities of monitoring terror suspects.
It does. They were being monitored, and clearly it would seem to be a very good thing that was happening, but there is still a controversy, isn't there, over the monitoring of people who have been jailed for potential extremist activity, and whether or not TPIMs are strong enough. These are the orders that will mean that people are watched, measures that will involve their surveillance, whether they're strong enough to stop people getting into the wrong company, as it were, once they do leave jail.
Yes, and of course the independent reviewer of terrorism, who changes every couple of years, of course, it's their job to look at this. Now, Lord Carlisle, who's one of the previous independent reviewers of terrorism legislation, actually said we should bring back something like control orders. Because the London Bridge attack recently, the ringleader there would have been subject to those control orders and would have probably been stopped. He was on the radar but deemed low priority, which is why he was able to go through with his plot. But had there been stronger measures in place, he probably could have been stopped. But it's always a balance between civil liberties and counter-terrorism, stopping terrorism. Again, it just shows the complexity. The police and security services have to tread a very fine line in between legislation and also monitoring and pursuing and arresting terrorists who want to do damage to the people of Britain.
Yeah, I should add that the Ministry of Justice have just put out a statement saying that we have announced plans to house the most subversive prisoners in specialist units, preventing their influence over others, and have also boosted the ability of frontline staff to challenge extremist views by providing over 4,500 officers with the specialist training and knowledge to tackle this evolving threat. Usama Hasan, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming in.